everyone. Welcome to First Things First. We made it to Friday. Harrowing as it was for some of us.
Jenna Wolfe got locked in the bathroom.
Yes. Free Jenna. Free Jenna.
3 minutes ago,
No,
America.
That's not a metaphor for something.
No, Jenna Wolfe got locked in the bathroom.
Got locked.
I thought it was going to be my big shot.
Yeah.
Open the show.
Sports
Now they're going to have jaws of life to cut her out of the bathroom in there.
That really
We
did
needed it.
happen.
I'm
He's Danny
frazzled
Cannell, by
ever
the
so
way.
slightly. Nick, Danny, thanks for joining us this morning. Let's get on track. We have a huge NFL weekend, and I never use the word huge. But we start with Week 14 last night in Chicago. They call it Thursday Night Football. Bears and Cowboys, both teams needing a win to make a playoff push. And last night, Chicago pushed just a little bit harder. Mitchell Trubisky looked good, counting for 4 total touchdowns, 300 yards of offense. It was just too much for the Cowboys as they once again come up short against a top 10 defense. Sorry, Jerry. They've now dropped 7 of their last 10 after starting the season 3-0. Sorry, Dak. Former Cowboy Troy Aikman weighed in on the current Cowboys and where this leaves their playoff hopes.
I don't know how you come back from this. I really don't, Joe. I mean, for the last 2 weeks, we've heard from them that they were going to get it going. They had a chance at home against the Buffalo Bills to finally beat a team with a winning record. That didn't happen. They got embarrassed in that game. They come here against a team that had a lot to prove but was struggling in a lot of areas, and it was the same old story. And so, yes, even though we knew before this game kicked off that it didn't matter if they lost, they were still going to be in contention. I don't know how you sell that if you're Jason Garrett or Jerry Jones or anyone. When you have a performance like that to say, hey, but we're still alive. I mean, hey, we'll go play this week against the Rams, and it's all right out in front of us. And I don't think the players hear that. I wouldn't hear it if I were them. And this is on the players as much as it is on the coaches. They've got to be better. But I'm not sure I'd even talk to the team this week. I'd just say, let's just go play next week, and you guys figure it out. But the talk is over, and it has been over for a while.
Wow. Well, our talk is just beginning, which is good news for us. Nick, you think it's time for everyone to admit the Cowboys just aren't a very good football team?
Well, they haven't played well at all throughout the course of the season in the critical moments against the best opponents. But they're the number 1 offense in football. They have a top 10 defense. The number 2, 3, and 4 offenses in football are combined 28 and 8 in Baltimore, Seattle, and Kansas City. Seattle and Kansas City do not have top 10 defenses to go along with their top 4 ranked offense. You can't have the number 1 offense and a top 10 defense and not, in theory, be a good football team. The team they lost to yesterday, the Chicago Bears, has statistically a slightly worse defense, the 11th ranked defense, and the 29th ranked offense. So why is one team 7-6 and the other team 6-7? Well, because of coaching, because of the inability to make the critical plays in the critical moments, and because once again, Danny, last night, the Cowboys were punched back and they just folded. The big bully who nobody wants, even though they're not really bullying anybody, but metaphorically, the bully who is a great front runner, but as soon as someone shows any resistance, goes and runs home. And the reason I liked the Bears last night was the Bears and the Bills, to me, are very similar teams. Defensive-minded, tough teams, questions at quarterbacks. And guess what? The Bills were down 7-0, scored 26 straight. The Bears were down 7-0 and scored 23 straight. Why would it have gone differently than Thanksgiving? It didn't, and that's where the Cowboys are right now.
I think the problem can really be boiled down to one thing. I think it is between the ears. I think it is all mental for this team. I mean, you mentioned some of the statistics. Dak Prescott is having a career year.
Yep.
Ezekiel Elliott, still a top 5 running back. Amari Cooper, top 5 wide receiver. Defense, as you mentioned, top 10 most meaningful categories. When you watch them play, the first drive was perfect.
Yep.
They're running, mix of run and pass, moving their way methodically down the field. They take up a lot of the time of possession.
The defense forces a takeaway
right
after that.
The first quarter was awesome. But as you mentioned, they get punched in the mouth. All of a sudden, they face some adversity. And then you can almost feel the tension on the screen as you're watching the game. They are wound so tight. Here's where I would disagree a little bit with Troy Aikman saying, I don't know what to say to this team. Here's what I would do if I was Jason Garrett. I would call them in today, because a lot of times, you'll have a day off. They'll just say, hey, it's been a rough loss. We've lost 3 games in a row. Just going. I would call them all in, and I would say, all right, and bring the team together, and the team probably would expect, extra film. Maybe the entire team watches the film. We're going to get a tongue lashing or something like that. And I would say, let's get out of here. Let's do some team activity that is just fun. And I know it's really hard to imagine that, but Joe Madden, the legendary manager of the Cubs, Rays, outstanding manager, what was he known for? A relaxed atmosphere, getting his players to loosen up somewhat. This team needs to relax. They're trying so hard, they're executing. They're just not getting it done when it matters the most. They need to step away, take a breath, and then after that, when you come back and start prepping for your next game, then you show them, all right, we're still in this. We still can actually win our division and get a home playoff team. And then once we're there, everything is reset. Nobody will remember these 3 games.
That's interesting because it's the one thing echoed by Dak Prescott. We have good chemistry at times, he said, by Jason Garrett. We have to figure out how to play as a team. Jerry Jones, after the game last night, said, we have to learn how to win as a football team. Of all the things where we place blame on Jason Garrett, on the run game, on the pass game, on whatever it is, team chemistry was not really one of them coming into this season. Do you feel like the team as a cohesive unit is not playing between the ears?
No, I don't think this is a team chemistry issue. I think it's an execution and critical moments issue. I think that if teams have even close to equitable talent as the Cowboys, they cannot make the requisite plays in the critical spots. And that is, I know we're going to talk about coaching all morning, and we should. If that's not coaching, then the hell is coaching. Mm-hmm. If what's going wrong with the Cowboys, it has been since September 22nd, they have played one good football game. It was against Philadelphia Eagles. Since they've played 10 games since then. They're 3-7, and 2 of those wins, Detroit, it's a 5-point game midway through the fourth quarter. Detroit stinks, or a 6-point game. And the Giants, it's a 5-point game midway through the fourth quarter. And the Giants are abysmal. But you look around the league. The last 10 weeks, Miami's been as good as Dallas. 10 weeks. What is that, 60% of the season? The sample sizes are no longer small. The evidence is no longer something you can dismiss. And the fact that their statistical profile is what I said at the beginning is an indictment on not just the coach, but I'm also going to say the quarterback who has bet on himself. That's great. Okay, you need to find a way to play better in the opening 3 quarters of this football game when you're up against Mitch Trubisky, or you need to find a way to play better in the opening 4 quarters, the entire game, against Buffalo when you're at home against Josh Allen. Dak's got to own some of this too.
He absolutely does, but I think it's also, this goes back to where they're just pressing so much. You also had 3 drop passes that could have been critical. Yep. But it's nobody can get on the same page at the right time. That's their biggest problem right now. And I know Jason Garrett is going to take a bunch of heat, and he's deserved, and if they lose, he's probably fired, and we could all be okay with that. But that's where I do think it was interesting that Troy Aikman did call out the players, because at some point it does have to fall on them. When you see plays that are called and they're not executed correctly, how can you put that on the coaches? Yes, and the perfect example is sort of the same. Remember last week when there was a critical play and he threw it out to Zeke and it bounced to him on the flare, and last night it was a different running back, Olawale.
The fullback.
Yes, the fullback. And they tried to hit him, and there was clearly a miscommunication there. That, to me, I guarantee you that was coached up and they knew what to do, but for whatever reason, somebody blew a gasket there. I think it was the fullback. Maybe I'm giving the quarterback too much credit, but it looked like there was some sort of sight adjustment where he's supposed to be ready for it now. Instead, he runs, doesn't even look for the pass, and it ends up short.
That was definitely a mistake by Olawale, but they also said right after that Olawale on the year has 0 touches. Why? It is a coach's decision to have him be any of the reads on a 3rd down play in a critical moment of the football game. A guy who has not touched the football through 13 weeks of the season. So both can be true.
Right.
You know what I mean? That the players aren't carrying their weight to a degree, but the coaches also need to understand. I know, God forbid, Tony Pollard's out for the game. What are you going to do without your backup running back? Not throw to the Olawale kid, who at least they said on the broadcast has 0 catches and 0 runs on the year. Come on, you've got to know in the biggest spots to go to your best players, not to give a guy a shot for his first touch of the season.
All right. Let's talk some Odell Beckham Jr. Haven't talked about him much this season, which is what happens when you haven't done much this season. When he was traded to Cleveland back in March, the thought was that he and Baker Mayfield were going to light it up. They've, in fact, done the opposite. Baker is struggling, and Odell is 29th in receiving yards per game. Yesterday, OBJ was asked if he wants to stay in Cleveland. Take a listen.
What's the future hold? I don't know that. I don't know the answers for that. You know, right now I'm just taking it a day at a time, trying to finish the season healthy, trying to win these last 4 games and see what happens. No one knows what the future holds like tomorrow. Like I couldn't tell you what's going to happen. I couldn't sit here and tell you whether I'm going to be here, want to be here, don't want to be here. This is exactly where I'm at now. And I wouldn't rather be anywhere else, you know. So it's something that, like I said, God has a plan, and in the offseason, everything will figure itself out. I feel like I've been here before asking questions about the next team while I'm on a team already, and that's just kind of something that I'm just tuned out for right now. And you catch me in the offseason, and we'll see what happens. I don't know God's plans. You know, I just follow His lead.
Danny, that right there is the definition of vague. You could have put this to bed, or at least made this a 15-second
Yes.
comment instead of a 2-minute comment where it is open-ended with 3,000 doors. But what did you make of what Odell had to say?
Why are you still talking after the first phrase that's out of your mouth?
I agree.
The only thing you should say there is, what are you guys talking about? Why am I even being asked this question? So you silence it, you put it to bed, immediately the question is asked. We were talking in the pre-show, I'm like, why was this question even asked? It was some, crazy report that without
Twitter.
a lot of credibility was posed this question. That's what Odell should have responded with. The part that's disappointing about this for me is it made all the Odell critics, it proved them right. Because at the beginning of the season, the question was asked, yes, there's a tremendous amount of talent on this team, but what happens if Odell doesn't get his touches, or Jarvis Landry doesn't get his touches, or this team starts to implode? What happens then? And it's going to be a disaster. It's going to be a soap opera. And this proves all those critics right. Why can't you just silence them and say, no? It makes no sense to me why a professional doesn't know how to understand a question like that and just put it to bed.
So Odell, this is breaking news to me. Odell's got a no-trade clause? No, does he? Can you guys tell me that? Because I don't think so, right?
No.
So Odell is responding to, and it was prior to this tweet about whether or not they were going to trade him. Has there been a lot of speculation that the Browns pre-deadline should trade him for offensive line help? That was like a thing, right? I remember our friend Colin talked about it, that the Browns went too big on luxury items, not enough on foundational pieces. Was Odell part of that fight? I don't remember. I don't think
No.
he was.
He was not.
Has he been a distraction
Nope.
at all?
Not at all.
And so he proves them right by giving an honest answer, which is, I don't know what's going to happen, because he doesn't know what's going to happen. Did he say, I don't want to be there? No. In fact, he said Jarvis Landry's one of my best friends in the world. Now, Odell has never done himself favors in regards to just giving the 15-second cliche answer. But this is one of our favorite media hobby horses, which is killing the athlete for being bland, and the rare athlete that will actually take a question and then speak without calculating what I'm going to say. Well, I don't know. It does seem like people ask me this a lot. My best friend's here, but what he didn't say, he's probably thinking, this obviously hasn't gone as well as we thought it would. What he also didn't say, but is true, I didn't ever ask to be traded here. And what he didn't say, but what is true is somehow I got a worse quarterback this year than I had last year with Eli. No one saw that coming. So I don't know what's going to happen in the future. How that is twisted to Odell is part of the problem, proving his critics right. Odell is having a worse season statistically than anyone could have imagined. And he has not been any type of distraction. He has not been any type of bad teammate. He has not been part of the problem in Cleveland. And so it seems like both of you want him to just flatly lie, be asked about it, say, I have no idea what you guys are talking about, never heard any trade rumors surrounding me, of course I'm going to be a Brown for life. Okay. I mean, that's fine. I would say it makes these shows a lot less interesting. It makes him a lot less earnest as a person. I will take authenticity over fraudulence every day of the week. And I don't think what he said there was wildly polarizing or out of bounds. He didn't throw any teammate under the bus. He didn't attack anyone. He gave an honest answer. I don't know what's going to happen because he doesn't know what's going to happen.
There is 100% a double standard in our business, right? Because we want colorful quotes. We want things to talk about. And then when they give them, we're going to crush them for it. But
that's a choice.
But I also think authenticity can sometimes, you have to be smart and aware of when to be authentic and when to know when to silence a dumb question. The phrase that I had a problem with said, I can't tell you if I want to be here or not be here. Why not? Like, why can't, and then, like, what message do you send to your teammates then? You are on the Browns now. It's not the time to be authentic and say, well, yeah, this team is not good. Or like any of these, to further this rumor and just continue and give them fuel to the fire. I mean, the players know the drill as well. They know that the more I keep talking and if I give them things, I'm going to be the center of attention, which I do think is a problem with Odell. It always has been. I think he knew where this was going to go if he opened up this can of worms.
I fully understand what you're saying, and I appreciate what you're saying. I think it makes shows like ours much better when we have fodder and stuff to talk about.
So we can rip them now.
That being said, is there one team that needs to focus more on actually just playing football and not on more reporters asking questions that aren't football related than the Cleveland Browns right now?
He doesn't decide what's asked of him.
Right, but he decides how he answers the question. And maybe he's not completely authentic right here with an answer like, this is where I want to be. But all this does, Nick, and you know it, is now this becomes a conversation starter. Now more reporters come in.
It
now you do
already
national...
was started.
It could have been ended, though, when we could have just focused on football.
Hold on. Be honest with me, both of you. So if Odell says, no, I'm a Brown, I'm a Brown for life, there's not Odell Beckham trade speculation the moment the season ends. Really?
No,
so,
but you can stop it. Ends.
Yeah.
Okay, so all right. So if there's a belief that the Browns are in a worse position against the Bengals this week because of that 20 seconds right there, that's a boat I'm not going to get on. And Danny, you saying, yeah, we're unfair to double standard, that's only because people do it. Everyone's allowed to take my position, which is honesty's good, we're not going to kill you for it. That isn't a viable position to take. People choose not to take it. But the part of this that is so frustrating to me is, I think most smart football people think it would be in the Browns' best interest this summer to consider trading Odell Beckham. I think most smart football people think it would be in Odell Beckham's best interest to be traded. And yet he simply says, I don't know, when I think most people think the best thing for all parties might be to go to a different football team with a more stable situation that doesn't already have legitimate weapons. And if he just says the logical answer, we kill him because he's Odell Beckham Jr.
But what you're saying there would prove the critics right, because the critics have said he's all the talent, but he's simply not worth it. Then you'd have the Giants making that decision.
How the
then
Giants
you'd be
doing?
having the Browns.
I'm curious.
No, I know, but and how would the Browns be doing without him too? I think would be a good question. But it does beg the question. It does make his critics right. If teams are passing on him saying, you know what, he might have all this talent, but we're going to move on to shore up another position. That doesn't happen with world-class wide receivers.
The critics were supposed to be proven right when the Giants got better moving on from the distraction. I think they've lost 10 straight games.
They absolutely
or
have.
8 straight games, pardon me. They were 2-2, yeah.
But here's the thing.
Straight games.
They weren't that good with him.
Yeah, fair enough. But okay, that's fine. The advice to athletes, if you want to be protected, do Kawhi. It'll be much better for us and for you. Just do what Kawhi does, and we'll all be good. I just want to engage in it.
On to Thursday Night Football now. Last night, the Bears handed Dallas their third straight loss. Cowboys have now lost 7 of their last 10 games, and questions swirling yet again about Jason Garrett's status with the team. However, after the game, Jerry Jones said he will not make a coaching change this week. Nick, is Jerry making a mistake sticking with Garrett?
Of course. I mean, I said after the Patriot game, and it was tough because they were on a super short week. They were going to play 4 days later on Thursday, so it might not have been viable. There's no reason not to fire Jason Garrett. And then after the Bills game, when it was a regular week, it was Thursday to Thursday, but regular time, 7 days, said there's no reason not to fire Jason Garrett. And now they actually have an extended week. They've gone from 4 to 7 to 10. Now that you have extra time, and you have another awful performance, and there's no reason not to fire Jason Garrett. This is the definition of an underachieving team? How have you done in close games? Oh, you're 0-5. Games decided by 7 points or less. How have you done against good teams? Oh, you're now 0-6 against teams with a winning record. You're a front-running team that has clearly, there's going to be a narrative today. Maybe the Cowboys aren't that talented.
That's wrong.
It's wrong. That maybe we just, you know how I know they're talented? They have the 10th ranked defense and the number 1 offense in football. The number 1 offense last year was Kansas City. They had the number 1 seed. 2 years ago was New England. They had the number 1 seed. 3 years ago it was New Orleans. They went 7-9, but they had the 29th ranked defense to go along with it. 4 years ago, the number 1 offense was Arizona. They went 13-3. If you have the number 1 offense, unless you just have an abysmal defense, Cowboys got 10th ranked defense, you are an excellent team. Unless you can't win close games, you can't make plays in the critical moments, and you constantly get out-schemed by your opponent. Check, check, check. If coaching matters in the NFL, Danny, which I would argue it matters more in the NFL than any of the other major sports as far as head coaching advantages, the Cowboys are at a major disadvantage. Every week they continue with Jason Garrett.
What would your option be, though? Are you going to elevate Rod Marinelli? Are you going to elevate Kellen Moore, John Kitna, like somebody from that staff?
I think I'd elevate Chris Richard, to be totally honest, and let the coordinator stay and elevate Chris Richard.
All right, so if that's the option there, it's not a bad option, but is that the difference maker? And you never know until you do it. I think one of two things need to happen. You either fire Jason Garrett if you're Jerry Jones, or you stop talking to the media and keep this speculation going. Because a couple weeks ago it was, hey, I'm going to try to put pressure on this team and say that, losing is unacceptable and I might make changes. Then you come out after Thanksgiving and you say 0% chance I'm making a change. Now you kind of, then during the week he says Jason Garrett's going to coach in the NFL somewhere without endorsing him. Jerry Jones is a part of this problem too. That's something that doesn't get talked about enough. It is dysfunctional the way he runs this organization, the way he gets involved in a lot of the decision making, the way he holds press conferences after every single game and gives us all stuff to talk about and adds additional pressure to this team who clearly is not handling it well right now. So one of those two things are going to happen. I don't think either of them do, though, because what's the point of this game? Is that really going to be the difference if you get rid of Jason Garrett? Is that going to put you over the hump? No,
Probably
his contract's done. Just let it play out. It'll be easy for you. If you're Jerry, you'll just say it'll be an easy decision to make. That's where I think he's fallen back on. And what happens if? What happens if they do win the NFC East and all this talent puts it together?
But then I want a different coach in place.
If you want that to happen, what if they are able to fight through it? We've seen other teams struggle at times.
If they are able to fight through it, go ahead.
I was going to say at minimum. So here's the thing. I don't think it's if you're NFC East, you're keeping, because that's the worst division in the history of football. I don't think it's if you win a playoff game. I think you have to go to the NFC Championship game to keep Jason Garrett, and then it's there for you. And if he does,
drawing dead for. No, right. And my point is because of the talent. If all of a sudden they had an infusion of a great head coach, and I'm not saying we have no idea if Chris Richard would even be an average head coach,
right?
But I know what Jason Garrett is. At this point, I would take the unknown over the known because what I'm about to show you is unacceptable. The Cowboys points scored, points allowed, yards forced, yards allowed, compared to, I'll just tell you that team is in a moment. They've scored more points. They've allowed fewer points. They have 1,000 more yards on the season. They've allowed fewer yards. Who's the other team? Show me, please. This 10-2 Seattle Seahawks. You know how a team can have scored fewer, allowed more, 1,000 fewer yards, allowed more yards? Because of two people. Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson makes the critical plays in the critical spots, and Pete Carroll always has his team ready to take a punch. Pete Carroll can Jedi mind trick his team into saying, we're going to punt the ball away, crazily, with 1:40 left in overtime, with no timeouts, and we're still going to win this game, boys. And somehow they do. You can't acquire Russell Wilson, but you can change the head coach to hope to find your Pete Carroll.
Well, you were a player. You were in locker rooms. Would a coaching change like this, is this something that can actually galvanize a team? I mean, this is a very talented team that seems like they are fractured right now in the locker room.
They absolutely are. They are the opposite.
An unknown commodity and a new head coach for the first time. Could that actually galvanize a team?
It could. I mean, sometimes there's a sense of urgency that needs to be, a change needs to be made to spur something different. The problem is, I think that only adds to the panic level. You mentioned the Seahawks. They are the definition of a clutch football team. And right now, the Cowboys are the antithesis of that. Like, I don't even know what the word is for anti-clutch, but they cannot get it done when it matters the most. They're great. First quarter opening drives, they have a scripted set of plays. They go right down the field.
And they haven't even been great with that. That's only the last 2 weeks they've been able to score first.
It is inexplicable how this happens, but I don't think changing a coach is all of a sudden going to rattle the cage and all of a sudden they figure it out and the
I don't think it will either. But I know that the status quo is going to lead to, if they win the division, getting crushed at home by either Seattle, who they could play as the 5 seed.
I don't think that's a done deal. If you had me put money on a team, I would clearly put those. But what happens if all the stats you give me, top 10 defense, Zeke puts it together? What if he rushes for over 120?
They start off 7-0, get punched in the face and fold. And by the way,
so the usual.
On that comparison, credit to Football Perspective on Twitter, who brought it up last night. I saw it. I thought it was great. So I want to put it on the show. But
all right. Let us move on to the biggest matchup on Sunday, the Chiefs and the Patriots, the new chosen one in Pat Mahomes against the original chosen one in Tom Brady. TB12 knows how fast this Chiefs team plays. Mahomes knows you can't make mistakes against Brady and Belichick. I know that Nick will have an opinion on this one. So, Nick, take it away. Who wins this game on Sunday, Patriots or Chiefs?
This is the first time in at least 5 years that I would be legitimately surprised if the Patriots win a home game. It's not just that I think the Chiefs can win, it's that I think the Chiefs will win. And I look at the resumes of these two teams. I look at how they've played against the best competition, how they've played recently, and I say, oh, well, barring some unforeseen circumstances, why wouldn't Kansas City go to Foxborough and win? The Patriots last month, Danny, let's just look at it. Played Baltimore. They were down 17 in that game twice. 17-0 and then 37-20. They lost that game twice. They escape against Philly. Philly since then has not won a game and let Ryan Fitzpatrick hang 23 straight on them. They escape against Dallas 13-9. Dallas since then has not won a football game and looks terrible. They then play Houston, and they're down 28-9 with 4 minutes left in that football game before they had some garbage time points. Kansas City, on the other hand, this year, they are, to me, wildly undervalued because you look at the record compared to last season, which, by the way, might end up being the same thing, 12-4, 12-4. Kansas City's played one bad game all year. The game against Indianapolis on Sunday Night Football, where they just, the offense was a no-show the entirety of the game. They have two what I would consider great wins, beating Baltimore and then beating Minnesota with their backup quarterback. And they also were tied with Green Bay in the fourth quarter with their backup quarterback. The Chiefs are a team that, while they have had some really, really bad game management moments late in games, which might be par for the course for an Andy Reid team, they have shown the ability to beat the best teams in football. The Patriots have absolutely not.
All right, I've made this mistake that you are making right now before in my life. I have doubted the Patriots late in December or last year in the playoffs. Said, man, this team looks like just left for dead. Like they don't have anything left in the tank.
I've made that mistake as well.
And I'm not making it again until Brady and Belichick decide to ride off in the sunset. The Patriots' problems, as much as Brady's play has been critiqued, and it has not been very good this year, it's because they're relying on him too much. They are passing the football 60% of the time. So that's the most since 2015. It's only happened 3 times in Tom Brady's career. 2015, 2012, and this season. They are relying on him too much with a lack of weapons on the outside. They do not have a 100-yard rusher this season. Guess where the Chiefs' weakness is? Rushing defense. They are 30th in the NFL. I think the Patriots will give Sony Michel a healthy dose. I think they'll get back on track. I think they'll play a little bit of the keep-away game that we saw earlier this season. The Colts had success with it. Remember, they go in and they start running the football. They hold the ball for 40 minutes almost of the game. I think the Patriots are going to go to that, which actually maybe will help the Patriots that they figure out they've been relying on Tom Brady too much. He's 42 years old. You can't keep going to him and keep going to the well, or else you're going to get exposed, which they have been to this point. But like the Patriots do, they figure things out. And I think that's something they're going to figure out, and it's going to happen this weekend.
So here's the other concern, though, for New England, because I'm not going to sit here and argue the Chiefs' run defense is anything other than awful. It was awful last year. It's been awful this year. The overall defense has been better this year, especially when Chris Jones has been healthy, but that's because of getting to the quarterback or forcing turnovers, pass defense, not because of the ability to stop the run. The other problem for New England, though, is what they had hung their hat on for 2 months was the most dominant pass defense the league had ever seen through 8 games. That's what it was through the first 7-8 weeks of the season. 1 touchdown allowed, 18 interceptions. A quarterback rating allowed of 35 when you get a 39 for spiking the football. Like, they were absolutely perfect in pass defense. Since they have started, it started with Baker, then Lamar, then Wentz, then Dak, then Deshaun. Baker's not playing well this year, but 5 legitimate NFL starting quarterbacks. Since then, 7 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, a 91 rating allowed. Still doing better than most do against that caliber of quarterbacks, but not the dominant force they were. Mahomes is better than all those guys, even though Lamar's the MVP this year. And the Chiefs have more speed than all those teams. Do you think the Patriots can hold the Chiefs under 24? I don't. If they can't, can the Patriots get to 27 even against this susceptible Chiefs defense? What evidence do we have recently that against any team with a pulse they can? That's what I haven't seen.
Yeah, the matchup of the game, which is going to be fascinating, is Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid's offense against Belichick and that defense. And that will determine the outcome. And you are right. I think I was on here after that 8-game run with the Patriots had, and I was saying, well, hold on, let's dial it back a little bit on the greatest of all time type of defense. If you looked at the list of quarterbacks they were playing against, it was Luke Falk for the Jets, and it was, either Josh Rosen or Fitzpatrick for the Dolphins. It was not exactly a list of juggernauts there offensively. But I still think what Belichick is really, really good at is finding your weakness and exposing it. And he'll bring some pressures that Mahomes hasn't seen. But the one thing I think the Patriots win this weekend, but from an overall standpoint, I think the Chiefs are kind of just lurking in the woods. Everybody's kind of forgotten about them with the emergence of the Ravens. Exactly. And that is the time where I would snatch them up from a value perspective, too.
No coaching discrepancy this weekend.
Maybe one of the smallest you're going to have with Belichick. Belichick versus Harbaugh, by the way. Well, a small coaching discrepancy.
But this one
Ravens
even
won.
Smaller, I would say, against Andy Reid, unless.
No. I think you're right. Like Andy Reid's not intimidated, like Harbaugh.
Yes.
Not intimidated by Belichick.
Kenny, time for everyone to admit that the Cowboys just aren't a good football team right now?
No, they're not a good football team right now. We try to ask ourselves, what is it that has this team in the position that they're in right now? Why are they underachieving for the most part this entire year? After winning 3 straight, they've lost 7 of the last 10. So everybody's trying to figure out with a team that had championship aspirations coming into the year, what is it about this team that's just not clicking? Now, you can point to the play calling, and there are some things after last night's game that leave you scratching your head, like the fact that you gave the ball to Ezekiel Elliott 8 times on the first drive, and you marched 17 plays for 75 yards, and you punched it in for a touchdown. Then he only has 11 carries for the rest of the game. Like, that's the part of it I don't understand. Going to Olawale on that last possession before the first half and not being able to convert in that situation and having to settle for a long field goal, which you missed. Of course. That's a question mark right there. Why did you have that play call? But ultimately, it's about this team being able to play complementary football. And their players are not going out there and they're not executing. And Dak Prescott talked about it after the game. Like the fact that you were able to force a turnover on that first Bears possession and then you end up going 3 and out as an offense. To me, it's a completely different game if your offense is able to get some points off of that turnover on their second possession. If you're talking about having a double-digit lead, all of a sudden, the pressure shifts all the way back to Mitch Trubisky and all the question marks we've had about him for the majority of the season. But that wasn't the case. You ended up punting the football, and then the Chicago Bears ended up reaching Dallas Cowboys territory 6 out of their first 7 drives, and they're putting up a lot of points. So I just feel like there were a lot of missed opportunities in the game, and the players need to absorb some of the blame on why this team hasn't performed up to expectations.
They absolutely do. The talent is there. Like, is it a good football team? It's a talented football team. When you look at the year that Dak is having, a career year, he's putting up statistically, he's having his strongest year yet. Ezekiel Elliott still up there, top 5 running back. Amari Cooper still up there, top 5 wide receiver, production-wise. Defense defense is performing. So what is missing from this team? We use the term clutch a lot. It's a cliched term. This team is not clutch. They do not know how to respond to adversity once a team comes back at them. Once they do struggle a little bit, once they can't convert off that opening interception and get points out of it, they have to punt it back. Chicago comes right back there. For whatever reason, and that's why you hear the players perplexed. They don't know the answer either. Again, Troy Aikman said, hey, I wouldn't even know what to say to him. I think you have to do whatever you can to try to get this team to breathe a little bit. Like, imagine if this was my, last time on this show and you guys said, if you give one incorrect stat or if you say one thing or you make one wrong prediction, you're never coming back on the show. I would be paranoid. I'd be like, oh, man, I'm not going to talk very much. Yeah, you have to loosen this team up somewhat. And I don't know how you do that if you're Jason Garrett, but at some point, this team just needs to breathe. You can see and feel the tension when you're watching them play.
But here's the problem that I have with, not problem, but my disagreement with what Troy said is you can't be a just mediocre talent and lead the league in yards. You just can't. You can't be mediocre talent and lead the league in yards and be a top 10 defense. The only way those two things can be true and you have 6 wins is if either you are a turnover machine, like the Tampa Bay, I think, is top 5 in yards, but Jameis, trick or treat Jameis. And Dak has turned the ball over more than he did his rookie year, but he hasn't been a turnover machine. You don't look at the Cowboys and they're just constantly 2 and 3 turnover games. Or in the critical moments, you're settling for 3 instead of 7. In the critical moments of understanding, stealing a possession before the half, making sure the opposition doesn't get a possession before the half, those types of situational coaching things, you are just incompetent, which is why so much of the blame to me does go on Garrett rather than the players, because I look at another team in the league with 6 wins, the Indianapolis Colts. They have the 19th ranked offense. They have the 13th ranked defense. So a far worse offense, worse defense, way worse kicking situation. I know Maher's missed a bunch lately. Vinatieri tried to retire in week 2 and they should have let him in Indy. But Frank Reich is an excellent coach. I think one of the best young or first relatively new head coaches we have in the league. The Bears, who have 7 wins now on the year because they beat you. Where are they? Oh, they have a defense that's 11th, yours is 10th, and they have an offense that's 29th, and they've had the same level of success as you. That's coaching, which is, so I'm not going to buy into the narrative, we just overrated the Cowboys' talent. They are just not they're not achieving up to the level of their talent, and we've seen that now for 10 straight weeks.
But Kenny, here's the thing, and you said this, Danny, earlier, is that you wish the team would really relax a little, get out of their own heads. And maybe Jason Garrett should understand that and take them out and get them to just relax a little bit. He's pressing too. We saw that when he went 4th down on his own 20. You don't think he has the same pressure from Jerry Jones that this team seemingly has from the outside world? It's really hard. And they're all healthy for the most part. Mm-hmm. This is when they should be hitting their stride. If it doesn't fall on the head coach because he has so much pressure on him, what do you do to get these players out of their own heads?
Well, here's the thing. I don't necessarily feel like you got to get these guys to relax. I mean, you got to get these guys to perform. It's a production-oriented business. It's what have you done for me lately? I don't believe that the Cowboys somehow, some way are just a less talented team this year when they have relatively the same cast of characters. Yes. And we've seen the control because in the Dak Prescott, Ezekiel Elliott era of Cowboys football, they've had a winning record. I mean, they have not had a 500 record. They haven't had a losing season. They've had a winning record all 3 of those years. So when I'm looking at this team sitting below 500 in December, I have to look at the head coach and say, that's a big part of it. I mean, coaching is getting guys to do what they don't want to do so they can become what they want to become. Clearly, the Dallas Cowboys, there's something missing when they're out there on the football field. The drop passes, the missed tackles, the miscues in terms of the adjustments between the quarterback and the receivers. Like, all of those things can be attributed to the coach.
And Dan,
but how do you attribute drop passes? You know, how do you contribute that, like not executing to the coach? Like if the ball is delivered and a guy drops it, or if a guy's open and Dak short hops it to him like Zeke on Thanksgiving Day, how does that fall on Jason Garrett? Like to me, I think.
Well, who's the guy that's there day in, day out watching the guys practice? Who's the guy that's setting the standard in terms of what we're going to be as a football team? That starts with the head coach.
Right.
I mean, Wade Phillips used to say it all the time. He says, either you're coaching it or you're allowing it to happen. Either way, the mistakes are on me. That's what it is on game days. So I think that Jason Garrett has to be the guy that you look out when this team is not disciplined, when this team is not executing, when there seem to be mental lapses. I mean, yes, the players obviously have a part in it, but that comes down to the head coach being able to set the agenda for the club. And Jason Garrett has not done a very good job of doing that the entire year.
The whole organization is a dumpster fire. It really, from Jerry having a press conference every week, putting this up for grabs, what are we going to do with Jason Garrett, to Jason Garrett, to the players, like all of it. And that's why you have this combination of this team, which is severely underperforming and losing 3 games in a row.
And anyone that thought the Cowboys were going to be a drastically different team this Thursday against a team with a great defense, question marks at quarterback, that is around 500 or above, than they were last Thursday against a team with an excellent defense, question marks at quarterback, around 500 or above, was kidding themselves. And this was, and Troy said it during the broadcast, this is a carbon, he almost sounded disgusted when he said it. This is a carbon copy of Thanksgiving, and it was. A great opening drive. You take the lead, you're up 7-0, you have a chance to take control of the game, and then you get punched back and you fold. On Thanksgiving, what was it? It was 26 straight points for Buffalo after 7-0. Yesterday, it was 24 straight after 7-0. That's unforgivable. I don't think there's shame in losing to Buffalo the way a lot of people did. There was shame in losing the way you did. I don't know that there's shame in going to Soldier Field and losing to the Bears when Trubisky plays well, because when he plays well, they should be a really good team. But losing the way you did the exact same game 2 weeks in a row when you're flailing about, that, to me, is an indictment, as you guys are saying, on everyone, but it does start at the head coach.
What makes it even harder is the opponents are starting to sense it, and that's why the Bills are out there mocking them. And I think even the Bears last night, their confidence started to build, saying this team's going to cave, and they did.
Here with Chris Caney, we're talking Patrick Mahomes, we're talking Tom Brady, we're talking Sunday in Foxborough when we get to see the 24-year-old versus the 42-year-old. Both quarterbacks have not played up to their MVP standards this season. However, there is no doubting their accomplishments. Danny, who do you trust more?
I'm glad Danny's going to go first on this.
Mahomes or Brady?
I'm excited to hear this.
You know, this whole segment, I took over. I should get co-producers credit on this segment alone.
Yeah.
Because I said, can we please do who do you trust more at quarterback? After the last time I was on here, we did Carson Wentz or Tom Brady. How did that work out?
Okay,
who won the game was the answer. It's the GOAT. You have to give Tom Brady credit for what he's done throughout his career. I know statistically you can come up with a lot of evidence that says he is not performing the way he did throughout the majority of his career. But I will remind you, he still is one of the guys that just figures out a win. He doesn't care about throwing for 300-yard games. He doesn't care, hey, how many touchdowns do I have? He cares about winning, which is the ultimate stat. I have a question for you.
Yeah, please.
Do you know Tom Brady's record playing at Gillette against the entire AFC with Julian Edelman?
42-0.
42-0. Yeah. Who are you going to trust more in this spot? The quarterback who comes in, and he's a hot, young, shiny new toy. Yeah. Patrick Mahomes is awesome. Or the guy who has yet to lose a game with the entire AFC when he's had Julian Edelman at his side. For 10 years. That's been a decade running.
It's been a decade run. You're absolutely right. And I'm so excited that my guy's going to be able to be the one to end that. And just like I was very excited, full disclosure, last year, that I thought it was going to be my guy, Patrick Mahomes, again, full disclosure, the stadium that I grew up going to was going to be the team that ended the Patriots run. Instead, Chiefs lost, and they lost in overtime in a game that Patrick Mahomes threw three touchdowns, took the lead in the fourth quarter two separate times.
They were great
and
stats.
Tom Brady, a guy who just knows how to win, not only threw an interception in that game in the end zone, but threw another interception and then threw another interception to lose.
Was there a penalty on that one?
To lose the game, but Dee Ford's little fingertips were lined up right over the line, and so a new narrative was written. But this is an obvious, easy answer. Who do you trust more right now? Would you rather have Giannis or Wilt? Well, Wilt, God bless him, has passed away. Giannis still playing. The idea of because you're the GOAT, every week you get to be it, it's not how it works. You have to perform up to that level. Right now, Tom Brady is the second highest rated passer in the AFC East because Josh Allen has overtaken him. This is an unfair fight. You have a 24-year-old future Hall of Famer ascending towards his prime. You have a 42-year-old GOAT who is now not only on the back end, but playing the worst football he's ever played, rookie season included. So to me, Canty, the answer is obvious, and 32 GMs out of 32 GMs would say Patrick Mahomes, any situation, any scenario, over Tom Brady in 2019.
Well, here's the thing. Tom Brady isn't playing good football, but I think that has more to do with the lack of weaponry on that team than it does the decline in his performance. But I do believe that there's a first time for everything. So that 42-0 at Gillette Stadium against the AFC, that could change this weekend just because if you're asking me who I trust the most on Sunday in terms of a production standpoint, it has to be Pat Mahomes because Pat Mahomes has the fastest wide receiver in the National Football League. He's got the best receiving tight end in the National Football League, and he's got one of the most innovative offensive minds the game has ever seen in Andy Reid as his head coach. So I think that Pat Mahomes will be in a position to have success. Now it's just a matter of Pat Mahomes being patient and taking what that Patriots defense gives him. Now, that Patriots defense got lit up by Deshaun Watson and that Texans passing offense. I think it was 4 touchdowns this past Sunday night. So we haven't seen that from that secondary this entire year. But we do know that traditionally Bill Belichick coached defenses, they struggle against mobile quarterbacks. And oh, by the way, who are their 2 losses to this season? Deshaun Watson and Lamar Jackson. So I think Pat Mahomes has an opportunity to have success on the road in Gillette, but it's just a matter of him being patient and not trying to force the ball down the field. Being willing to take the check down, being willing to continue to put drives together, keep the chains moving. I think he can get himself in trouble if he tries to push the ball downfield and it's not there against this secondary.
Since we have our little circle of trust here, I'm going to open up with you. The last time, when we had that debate last time with Brady or Wentz, and Brady got the best of him, I was going to take to Twitter, but I was like, you know what? It wasn't an emphatic win statistically. You could have made
Brady
a case for
wasn't
Carson.
any good in that game.
Good. I am not holding back. If he wins this game, I don't care if he throws 3 interceptions. If he wins, that should be the ultimate stat there. I think the thing that we're missing out on is who Tom. Yes, Patrick Mahomes is going to get challenged from the Patriots. We're sure Bill Belichick is going to have a game plan for him. The Chiefs' defense is still a liability, especially against the run. And I think that's where Brady, for the first time all season, may not have to throw it so many times. He's already on pace to have his career high in pass attempts, which, look at Peyton Manning. When he won the Super Bowl and rode off in the sunset, had his worst season statistically. And they were limiting way worse than this. But they were trying to limit his exposure. The Patriots are doing the opposite. They're putting more pressure on Tom Brady with a lack of weapons, which is why I think you're seeing those numbers decline. But eventually, I do think they figure it out. And I think the Chiefs' defense is exactly what's going to come at the right time.
Well, then the Texans should have, because the Texans with 31st third down defense, 32nd red zone defense, bottom 5 pass defense, and Tom Brady found himself with 9 whole points with 4 minutes left in that football game. Now, at the end of the game, had a little Dak Prescott-style garbage stats to make it look better. But Tom Brady, since week 6 against the Giants, has 8 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, and has not had a single game with a pass rating north of 100. And I know how we do the math on this. When the Patriots play well, it's the defense, and Brady was amazing. And when they play poorly, it's, man, Belichick didn't have that defense ready to play, and Brady's weapons. How can you blame him? The idea that Tom Brady is just working at such a deficit this year compared to other quarterbacks, I reject. Does he have the weapons Patrick Mahomes has? No, not when they're both fully healthy, but Tyreek Hill missed a month and a half, and then Patrick Mahomes missed time. The Chiefs were without their left tackle. The Patriots were without their center after losing him early in the year. Both teams missed a guard throughout the season. We do this extra math for Brady because he has earned our respect. Now, he hasn't earned the team's respect enough for them to give him the contract extension he wanted this offseason, but he's earned our respect because he's the greatest, not just quarterback, with respect to Jerry Rice and Jim Brown, he's the greatest football player ever. But it comes to an end for everyone at some point. And if I'm right, and if Candy's right, and the Chiefs, you have the Chiefs this weekend, correct? Or no?
I've got the patch.
Okay. All right, I just don't want to steal it from my bad. Okay, so if I'm right, and the Chiefs win this weekend, the Patriots are going to have to stare at this reality. There are 3 teams other than the Patriots in the AFC that really matter. Baltimore, whooped them. Houston, whooped them. And the Chiefs, if I'm right, You go 0-3 against the teams you're going to have to beat to get to the Super Bowl. The reality that I believe is very clear is going to become clear to everyone else, which is the Patriots this season are not equipped to make their record-tying fourth straight Super Bowl, even if the record says they are.
But you can't sit here and say, well, the weapons that Patrick Mahomes and Brady are working with are remotely similar.
No, but
There's
the weapons that Russell Wilson and Brady are working with are damn near
that's
identical.
Different. You didn't say that.
No, are damn near identical.
All right.
And
but
Russell Wilson might be an MVP.
There, but that's a significant difference.
No, but both teams have dealt with injuries on the offensive line. Both teams have dealt with guys being in and out of the lineup. We don't. With Mahomes, the discussion is he even the best quarterback in the AFC anymore? With Brady, the discussion is it's everyone's fault but his, which is because he's a 42-year-old man and we're nice to older people, which we should be.
You guys aren't nice to me.
Well, oh, touche. Good point.
Time to play Little Take Your Pick. On Sunday, Jimmy G and the 49ers' dominant defense will face a stiff test in Drew Brees, Michael Thomas, Alvin Kamara. Who's got the edge, the Niners' defense or the Saints' offense? Danny, take your pick.
This is a hard one for me, but I'm going to go with the Saints' offense here. Drew Brees, Alvin Kamara, I think you're going to see a steady dose. Similar to what we were talking about the Patriots, getting the run game going. I think that's a way to take some of the pressure off of Drew Brees. I think you get the run game going. You got Michael Thomas, who is lighting up the entire NFL. I know the San Francisco 49ers playing outstanding on defense, but playing at home, I'll take the Saints' offense.
You're right. The one place that 49ers defense can be had is in the run game, but I also think that Drew Brees and Sean Payton will use the short passing game as an extension of the run game. The last thing you want Drew Brees to do is to hold the ball against that 49ers front, get the ball out of his hands quickly. I think that's where they have the advantage.
We're going to make it a clean sweep here. We're all going to go Saints offense. In that building, knowing that everything they want is in front of them with this win, they are in great position for the 1 seed in the NFC, something they had last year they thought should have carried them to the Super Bowl, if not for the blown call. The Saints can just beat you so many different ways. They can beat you with both types of defense and both types of offense, passing and rushing in both regards. So I like the Saints in this game, and I like the Saints' offense ability to keep the Niners off balance, because you can't just blitz or send your full pass rush at them, because they have the ability to run the football on you.
Clean sweep. Y'all take the Saints. Let's move on. Last night, the Cowboys suffered another loss. However, they are somehow, some way still in the playoff race, because nobody wants to win the NFC East. Which quarterback, though, do you trust more to lead their team to the playoffs? Dak Prescott with the Cowboys or Carson Wentz with the Eagles? Danny, take your pick.
Man, this is not like the best options to choose from, especially from what we've seen unfold lately. I think it is a hard decision. I'll go with Carson Wentz. At least this team I've seen respond to some adversity earlier in the season. Remember, they were just left for dead, and there was all these speculation that players in that locker room doubted whether Carson Wentz was the right guy, or if was it Nick Foles who's playing in Jacksonville, all those things. At least they responded once in that situation. Dak has played excellent all season long, but when you need him to come up big in those big moments, he has come up short lately, so I'm going to lean with Carson Wentz.
Yeah, it's hard for me to lean with the quarterback that just lost to the Dolphins in Miami. But, I mean, I guess it wasn't his fault. That defense let Ryan Fitzpatrick put up, 37 points? But, I mean, I got to go with Dak Prescott just from the sample size that we've seen from both guys throughout the course of their career, and then the production that we've had from Dak to this point in the season. Even though I don't like the way that either quarterback is playing, I'll lean toward Dak Prescott.
I still think Philly's going to win the division, so I'm going to go with Carson Wentz. The entire NFC East has 3 wins. 3 as a whole division against teams above 500. They are all via the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles, to their credit, as mediocre as they've been, they've gone to Green Bay and won. They've gone to Buffalo and won. They beat the Chicago Bears team that the Cowboys just got embarrassed by last night. So Philadelphia, at least when they play well, we know they can beat quality opponents. Carson Wentz is part of that, despite him having a substandard year. So I say Carson Wentz.
All right, on to the biggest game of the weekend. Patrick Mahomes still looking to pick up his first win against the Patriots in his young career. What is he, 0-2?
He's 0-2. I mean,
but
Ofer's over.
Hey, he's still over. Which quarterback will have the better performance on Sunday, Mahomes or Brady? Danny Cannell, take your pick.
I'm going with Tom Brady, the GOAT. I think it does have to do with the challenge he's going to be faced with will be significantly less than what Patrick Mahomes is going to have to go against. So I'm going to go with Brady. He gets the win. By the way, Dusty came up with some great numbers for me for the The Chiefs defense, they're 4-0 against the AFC West team. So they're beating up on some bad teams in their own division. Outside of them, they're 4-4. Their points per game are up 17 points. There's a 17-point difference. So they have been making their hay against a bad division.
So Brady should have a great game. I'm excited to do the excuses when he
get
does.
Back on track.
I'm going to go with my homeboy, but a slight edge. I think Tom Brady has a more productive outing than we saw him last Sunday against the Texans. I think it's going to be one of those situations where these guys go back and forth, but I'm going to give the slight edge to Pat Mahomes.
I don't think it's a slight edge. I think it's a massive edge. I think Patrick Mahomes has an excellent game. I think Brady has a 2019 Tom Brady game, which is maybe one touchdown, a whole bunch of pass attempts with a completion percentage south of 60%, and maybe a few garbage time points. Because I don't not only think the Chiefs are going to win, I think the Chiefs can beat them by double digits in Foxborough. So Patrick Mahomes, without question. Well, look at you,
I'll sit on your corner, Danny.
All right,
I'll
there we go.
All
right, I'll tag you on that tweet when I send it out to Nick after that game.
I thought you blocked me on Twitter
just
years
mute
ago.
Just mute
Oh, okay.
All right, Lamar Jackson and the Ravens will be up in Buffalo for a pivotal AFC matchup against the Bills. The Ravens are big 6-point road favorites, according to our guys at Fox Bet. Nick, should the Ravens be on upset alert against Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills?
I don't think the Ravens are going to lose, first of all. But, yeah, the Bills are very well coached. They know exactly who they are, and they do that very well. And Josh Allen, quietly, the last month and a half of the season, has done a really good job protecting the football. And I would argue he is the second best running quarterback in football behind Lamar Jackson. That he's dynamic as a runner, and he's a big physical punishing runner. So there's a lot of things where the Bills in Buffalo can present problems for you. The question for Baltimore is this: are they going to be able to continue this red-hot streak of the last 6 weeks? It's not just that they've won 6 games in a row like this. It's who they've beaten and how they've beaten them. They have won at Seattle by 14, against New England by 17, played one bad team, Cincinnati. They beat them by 36, beat Houston by 34, beat the Rams by 39, and then in really awful conditions played the Niners, who were one of the best teams in football, or one of the best teams in football, beat them 20-17. They are outscoring their opponents in this stretch with you have Seahawks, New England, Houston, San Francisco, 4 of the top 7 teams in football, average score of 37-13. I don't know if you can keep up that hot of streak moving forward. You saw the offense take a bit of a step back in San Francisco, but conditions and defense. So, yeah, they've got to be on upset alert. This isn't the Bengals, clearly. This is a really good team and a team, Danny, they might have to play come the postseason, but I don't think they're going to lose to Buffalo.
I think they need to be on upset alert. I love the Bills with the number, getting 5.5 points, playing at home. I think if Lamar Jackson was not playing, like let's just say Joe Flacco had, played fine and he wasn't, we would be raving about Josh Allen and how he is changing the game. I mean, it's over the course of their 2 years playing, he has 5 more rushing touchdowns than Lamar does. Yep. Of course, he doesn't have the dynamic, escapability and just electricity that you can see with Lamar Jackson.
And raw rushing.
Yeah, he's of raw rushing yards, but he is actually playing really good football. You mentioned that. I think a critical stat to watch out for, it's kind of a unique one. If he completes 60% or more of his passes, they are 11-0. In this game, I think he can do that. I think they're going to have a game plan. It's going to be a little bit more conservative. And I think their defense may be one of the first ones that can at least contain Lamar Jackson somewhat. I would not envision Lamar Jackson to have another 100-yard rushing a day against this Bills defense. So I think they should be on upset alert. And it shouldn't take away from the Ravens. I still think the Ravens are the best team in the AFC, but the gauntlet of the NFL schedule, 16 games, putting it all together, the intensity level, all these, and taking it on the road, I think it could catch up to them this weekend.
Can Buffalo take anything away from what San Francisco did to Baltimore last week?
My only question there is how much of that was the conditions.
Right. I think a lot of it was.
But what every team is going to take away from not just San Francisco, but the game plan with Baltimore is very simple. You have to almost totally disrespect anything outside the hashes. You have to say, hey, if Hollywood Brown is going to kill us over the top, if Lamar is going to have one of his better deep downfield outside the hashes passing game, we're drawing dead. You have to try to put a disproportionate focus on the middle of the field for the short passes to the tight ends and for Lamar running in that read option scheme. That is what San Francisco was doing. Lamar had barely over 100 yards passing, and I think the receiver with the most receiving yards against San Francisco is Willie Snead with 12. And so you just have to leave wide receivers one-on-one and put all your personnel in the middle of the field. That is the way to slow them down. The reason Baltimore's so dangerous, and forget how well their defense is playing as of late, is Lamar has evolved enough as a passer that if he's having a good day as a passer, then you can't beat him. Like, you're going to need Lamar to be erratic throwing the football if you're going to beat them, because they are so dominant rushing the football, and they all of a sudden have a far improved defense since the trade for Marcus Peters.
The weather actually became a help to the defense when you can take away, because the underneath throws, the shorter ones to your tight end, those are a little bit easier to get a little velocity. You can spin it a little bit tighter. When you're trying to make the harder throws down the field, the elements become much more of a factor. So that absolutely played to the 49ers' favor in that game.
And just real quick, credit to Josh Allen, because he was a punchline for me. I didn't understand why they took him at number 6. I still don't know if in a few years that pick's going to look like the right one. But this year, only Lamar, Deshaun, Russell, and Dak have accounted for more touchdowns at the quarterback position. Over the last 8 weeks of football, he's only thrown 2 interceptions. He's not just a passenger on the Bills train the last few months. He's been one of the driving forces, and I never saw that coming. So even if he can't sustain it, credit to Josh Allen, who I poked a lot of fun at his rookie season.
He's had 8 straight games accounting for multiple touchdowns, best in franchise history.
Thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Remember, leave us a review and tell us what you think. Subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts and catch us on FS1 Monday through Friday, 6:30 a.m. Eastern.